What's going on, everyone? How are you? This is a fairly extensive video. I try to trim it down and make it as viewable as possible so you don't want to gouge your eye out with a fork. Wiring is what it is. This is a longitudinal video spanning from the time when the boat was exposed and gutted and raw, and then showing how at each stage of our boat, how we're the process, how we're moving the wires forward, how we're planning and prepping, how we're forward thinking, ultimately leading to the product. The steering console and the wiring overlap with each other, so you might as well do it all in one fell swoop here. So this is a big part of it, and then we'll obviously give you a preview on what you can expect from the next video in terms of what the deck is, and that's all coming right now. Check it out. Stay tuned right here. Right at here, where the boat is raw and gutted, is the best time to at least start your preliminary wiring process. Right now we're running wires from the very back of all the accessories, all the pumps. You're running a brand new one of these where the filament did not fall out. Also, all these items are available in my Amazon store, where you should be able to find everything and anything you'll ever need to restore your boat. And in doing so also massively helps my channel and my ability to fund projects like these. This is 14 gauge wire. 14 gauge wire is plenty enough for most applications. Unless you're going to be running like a serious amount of LEDs. Doing that, we're going to be running single outlets. These are all running off 5 amp fuses. I also have a bunch of marine heat shrink butt connectors, and we'll be using these as well. Wiring started with reconnecting the pumps with usable wire. And then I ran them through the hole instead of the side panel because all the wiring under the side panel was dead and cracked and corroded and rotting. And I just figured if you ran it through the side and you use conduits, the wire would bypass. It would avoid most of the heat that was underneath that aluminum sheet. As I don't know the extent of the damage of all the accessories and the pumps, we're going to test to see if they work. That good, because that's a Johnson build. I mean, that's a Johnson area. That's an expensive pump, so we're glad that that works. So that's not gonna go nowhere. They all work. Voila. So running them when the boat was raw, all the way to when we were going to put the side panels on, which was on the foam day. There we positioned them specifically to run into the console. That's where we're doing all this weird, odd work into the foam. And as we complete this is done in somewhat forward sight, knowing that the console is going to go right here, and then having the wires in the crucial spots where they're going to be in there, because the console is going to hold the main wire cluster where all the fusing, so that's all easily accessible. There is no other place where it should go. Real quick recap on how we got to the console, since we're covering it also. Just if you didn't watch the previous videos, this is what we did. After we installed it, we resanded it, we reprimered it, and we repainted it, and we got it prepped so it would actually match the rest of the carpet, because the initial boat carpet was brown, and so the console was brown, but it's taken on a new look now. I believe this is 6 gauge. This was 13 bucks. These are not marine grade, but 13 bucks versus like a lot of freaking money. They're literally like, I think, a 10th or a 20th the cost of what it would take for its marine grade equivalent. I remember I almost paid 50 bucks for like 6 feet of black and red wire. It was like a lot. It was like a ridiculous amount of money. I was like, I'm not gonna do it. Really, if this stuff corrodes, I will replace it for another $13. literally cut these off. Obviously, we're not going to use those. So before this is, I mean, this is not even a done piece. We have to gator skin, and we have to insulate the bottom to kind of deflect the heat. The back, we're probably going to drill a fairly decent hole into here, run the conduit from here, or even here, really anywhere we want, just as long as the wire can pull through, and yet slide up into the groove up in here, and then out, so the cluster can actually just keep on giving on and running through here. Right, so we got that in. Again, with these cable glands, obviously not trying to go for a watertight seal. Nothing about this is watertight, but they make excellent conduits, and they hold the wire snug. So this can't just be pulled randomly. It can't just be pulled and bind against the deal. I could have ran a traditional rubber grommet, but if this is for whatever reason pulled or jerked by the battery, that can dislodge the grommet and expose the aluminum. It'll cut the wire, and obviously we'll have a lot of the same problems that we did before if that happens. Just the cable glands really are such a good way to run conduits if we're looking about the secondary deal. And then we have our wires running here, which we will then directly run to the dual bus bar system. We have this, which this is going to be covered up by a wooden panel. It's going to interconnectedly link with this, kind of so it makes its own little thing along the entire side of the boat, and that's coming later. Now it's just a matter of where we're going to run this, which that has been jamming me up a lot, but I do want it to be ran here somewhere, because it makes absolutely no sense to run it anywhere else. So we're going to work on that. Honestly, what I plan to do now is I'm just going to have to cut like a space out right here. I'm just gonna have to do it. It's the only way, really. And then I'm gonna have to make an additional panel. So it's just, there's no other good way to have it under here. Like, you can't, it would be really hard and awkward to stick your head underneath there and like look at fuses that are out. It's not immediately accessible. Like, it would, I mean, even here, the one thing that was good on the console, these were the old fuse blocks, old and archaic, like not even done anymore to today's state, like way outdated, but they were right here. Meaning, if something went out, you could immediately access it. We're going to try and go off the same principles, because I think that's the best practice, most sound way of going at this. And we can panel this with something decorative over, and then obviously remove that when we need to access the panel directly. So just so you know, I didn't just on a whim decide to cut here like, oh, we're just going to cut here today, because I've been thinking about this for weeks. There is no better way to do it. I thought about any way I could do to avoid making a panel here. I thought about any way to possibly avoid doing it. There is no better way but to do it. Such a relief to actually finally do that. But we definitely want to... Cool thing is now we get to run an underneath deal to kind of extend it here on the wood to make something deep enough for this to actually stay down and be a nice little seat down, and that's our next step. That's what, how deep do we have to make this down? Will that fit in there? Barely. 1.5 inch depth would fit that like right on key without the protective covering. So maybe a little bit farther down than that. Okay, so I have just this piece. This is a really basic random piece of wood that we are going to stick under here. All right. Step 1, step 2. That's a good enough drop. So can't find any sort of waterproof butt connectors. What I'm going to do is use some silicone around the edges here. That was a tip I got from one of the individuals on some of my prior electric videos. And it's still in the little end there where the cap is, so those ends are sealed off. I want shrink wrap. I don't have shrink wrap. Like I have time constraints. Some of you are wondering, like, why am I not paying as much attention to detail on some of these spots and this, that, and the fourth. Yes, I am on time constraints. Yes, there are financial constraints. Yes, there are a lot of things happening right now that are causing me to not wait, not actually be able to wait for some things to happen, and I do apologize for that. I am also making everybody very much aware of this is what I'm doing now, this is why, but it's better to do it this way. And so it is better to find 6 gauge waterproof marine connectors, especially the ones with the internal adhesive inside, so when you melt it, it sticks. That's the best way to do marine grade connectors. I can't find those anywhere in my city, and I live in a city with nothing but boats everywhere, which is really actually kind of distressing. So wait for them till next week. Whenever they get into the mail, is just like I have a serious time constraint here. Yes, so that's happening, but I don't foresee this being a problem as long as we have this here. And then later on, if I can find some thick enough shrink wrap, I will just go buy it. All the terminals in here are tin copper. I just want to mention that as well. But though I guess initially expensive looking is just a huge lifesaver. This thing saves time and money and stress, and like to have your entire bus bar and fuse block line right there, it's invaluable. I would pay $100 for this, but then given for everybody else, and for me it's only like what, $30, $40. Just still in terms of what it does for electronics for your boat. Here it is. Here's the top cap that somebody, Dylan Huffman, right? Sorry. Dylan Huffman on Instagram came and hit me up, and I respond to everybody who hits me up, whether or not I can answer your question in an effective manner, because I hate phone typing. That doesn't mean I won't respond to you. If I see a request there, I respond to you. I think that's something Instagram has like unanimously over YouTube, is your ability to contact other people and just have a conversation. YouTube is a terrible platform for that. Here though, he contacted me and we got this going, and this is a nice top cap with us, the beaver together, and the Bass Tracker, the old vintage Bass Tracker logo right there. Try to cut like an edge. I just sanded it down flat and got this good. I'm gonna have to just repaint it. There's no other way. Or it's just gonna look terrible. Talk about, these are my Amazon store as well. Just these ones that are the exact size you need for the 14 gauge wire. I want to talk about here. I just have this wire running loosely through conduits through a deal here. I'm not gonna be able to put a cable gland the way I wanted to. It's just not gonna happen. But we do want to run some wires into the main paneling up in here. We are going to do that. Okay, so we're hooking this up, and we're hooking this with here. It's just a carbon fiber plate. I'm gonna panel it right over there, and that's what's going to cover the electric. And I resanded this down and resprayed it. I wasn't filming, of course, but I kind of got how after I repainted this, how I kind of carved out and refinished the initial Bass Tracker logo. So that's there. I use this with this is like a clay tool with a very, very fine tip that fit perfectly in there to re-etch out after I painted over it. Just kind of something I learned in bait making that I can pay forward to this boat build. These were the old switches. They for sure have had their run. And these are the new switches. We're using simple 3-prong switches that light up, and they're just overall simpler, much simpler to use, and they're gonna go in like cake. And then we have our switches here. Alright, so we got pretty much everything. I worked into the last night. If I don't work at night, I'll never get anything done. So I piggyback the ground, so when you press this, it actually starts up the light. You can see the lights on. There, can you see that? So that's all you really need. I don't know why like we have 4 and 5 prong switches and making everything count. I know there's dual LED setups like this, but really one light on when the switch is actually on. I know, unless it's like you're working in pitch black areas where you might need 4 and 5 prong switches where you have 2 LEDs constantly showing you with switches, and then the one activator LED, so it's brighter than the rest of the switches. But these are just fine. We have the aerator and the manual bilge hooked up. We're going to run the wires for the nav lights, and we're running them actually right here. I'm running the forward and aft nav lights together. And for those of you who are not familiar with naval terminology, the forward and rear nav lights together. And why are we doing this? Because it's only 2 LEDs, 14 gauge wire, especially 14 gauge marine wire will be able to hold that all day. 12 to 10 gauge heat shrink, you know, the little butt connecting thing. I don't know exactly what these are called, terminal connect, but it's on the last switch. The nav light is all the way over here, and there's where it will go. Those definitely work. When I bought it from Walmart, it's kind of stupid. What's wrong with this thing? This thing's... Yep, it works. This is a very, very inexpensive but crucial Atwood 50 amp circuit breaker. It was $9 at Walmart. It's also very cheap on my store. I have this in the link as well as this. This is a cutoff switch. I mean, all we need is a cutoff switch. I have a battery selector switch. It's gonna act the same thing as cutoff switch. We're gonna go to 1 and then off. Now you could, back here it's set up so you can go 1, or it'll connect you to both in the middle section, or you can go to 2, which would be all the way here, and then circles. This is a first circle, but really for this purpose we're not going to be... If he wants to run another one to a selective terminal over there, he could do that if he had 2 12-volt setups, but he's going to have a 24-volt force trolling motor specifically in 12 volts. So this is really just a cutoff switch. And we're going to install that over here very close to the line where he's at. Right here, though, we are going to interrupt the current. I don't have time to wait for terminals to come in the mail. I don't. I have like select days where I can do this. So these are 6 gauge blocks, which is perfect. And then I know these are not marine grade stuff or heat shrink or waterproof. So what we're going to do is we're going to waterproof it. And this is like legit true waterproofing heat shrink tubing. It's expensive, like $10 for a tube of this at the local store. This is also true marine grade tubing, meaning that it has an adhesive inside. So we're talking about something that absolutely blocks water ingress for a true IP rating, which I don't know what it would be at this. This would be it, and then obviously siliconing the front where the wires are, so no water really gets in, and the only thing that's exposed is this. I'm fine with that. I think this will fit these. It will. Our luck here with the lighter. That's all I got, but. Especially for me who does multiple boats, I should have like a heat gun, which is gonna like eliminate the scorch and then make a more solid thing all around. But right now all I have is a lighter, and I'm not waiting in the mail for a heat gun. But to be very clear that the lighter is not the best way to go, but it will work for the moment. It's so worth it for that stuff. Look at that. I mean, I have some of this in the link below too. Not just for this thickness, but for other things. But that's worth its weight in gold right there. Look, shrunk around, the adhesive melted and flew. I mean, it went fluid with the shrinking, and so we don't have to silicone anything. It's all in there. We just actually take some of that off where it was coming out the sides and pack it right in where it needs. That's good. We can run that a little lower, so it's like right there, and then on. That's a complete circuit right there. Off. We'll have to figure out how we're gonna get it to attach. That was one thing that was obviously not thought forward. Well, so much forward thinking in terms of how we're going to attach it. Probably put another back plate here and then rivet the back plate to the panel. That's the only way we're going to be able to do it. But for this, I just plan to anchor it with 4 screws. I'm being very careful. Now, the switches are about a 1/2 inch, conveniently, so we won't be having to cut such a massive chunk out like we did over there. Now that is the only thing staying in our way. Let's get that out. What? Alright, no brainer. We run from the panel, 1 wire lead with either a 5 or maybe a 10 amp fuse, just to the main panel here. Run another lead back to the terminal block for the bus bar for the negative end, and then we just have a free load because all these are piggybacked. They came pre-piggybacked. I love this cluster. This cluster is also in my links down below, and the Blue Fire. I try to get ones that are already clustered like this so people don't have problems with figuring out all the 5 little spots. But these, I mean, this is a 5. Remember, these are 3. These had 3. These have 5. Who wants to worry about figuring out where all those load ends are? This one came out, actually. What a piece of crap. I'm going to fix that. In areas where you're going to have like sharp edges, but you need to run wire soon, you're not going to be able to run a conduit or a cable gland or a grommet. Make sure you sand these down and just refine them with like fine grit sandpaper, and file them down and get a fine grit sandpaper and kind of make them as smooth as possible. That way, because just residual shaking, going through the water, going through the waves, going down the road, that will wear down on the wire, the insulation. For just cleanliness and for overall keeping the wires where they're at, where they're not flinging around, zip tying is very nice. Console, more or less, besides how I'm going to redo this, is complete. Now all we got to do to make this console not look like a complete load of ass is get a cover for the steering wheel and faceplate that with carbon fiber, and it's going to be good. Alright, here we are. Real quick sneak peek. We finally got this done. Got to carpet that piece and then get it all in here so it looks all nice. It's not a dry hatch though, but it is a venting compartment, and somebody said, well, where are you going to have some vents at so you can have key spots where you can vent and the subfloor can kind of, be free, where that might help with residual. It's a perfect spot for it to be. Thank you for whoever suggested that. So we'll be tying parts of that, cleaning up this, cleaning up the edges, making everything kind of look really nice and pop. But for now, we have the vented flooring down. One big strip across that's awesome, because right here is right where the water collects, right where the bevels. So if the boat's like sitting here, whatever moisture can't like drain to the back generally sits right there. You'll see it when you gut a boat where most of the residual moisture stays, and then that'll just go right out, because that spans pretty much most of the subfloor, just that vent. So it's nice. Here's the console. Pretty happy with how it came out. 8 switches. We'll be showing how to connect all those switches on the side here. We're going to be really completing a lot of that, but it's so much to just outline in one video. We're gonna definitely stretch into the next video because it'll make more sense once it's in the next video. And this came out really well. The only thing I would want to do is add some radiant barrier sheeting on the back of this so this doesn't just heat up like the 4th of July. It's really hot. Everything's in line. We've got the master switch. We've got it all running out here. We have that down here. We're gonna heat shrink wrap those. That will happen. And then we'll be putting the same sheeting up in here, gator skinning that, getting the seats clean, putting them on, getting everything tied together, putting on the carpet decals, putting in the latches, putting on the hinges, putting everything else. And we'll redo this. This is gonna be its own video. That thing deserves its own video, how we're gonna redo it. That'll be, when that thing goes on, this boat will be done. Let's put it that way. A lot of cool, exciting things. It's gonna get really exciting because everything's getting stuck together and progressing now, where it was just cleaning and fixing. All that stuff was very tedious, but we're really, the next few videos should be very, very cool. So just wait for it, all right? Stay tuned.